Welcome to the 64th reading of my memoir, The Innocence of Guilt. I find my dad. Brian and I went home often to see our parents. Mum had a new little Boston Terrier she named Toy, purchased through a friend who attended dog shows. This lady regularly picked Mum up in her car and drove her to the shows. It filled my mother's life, this passion for the doggy show circuit, and it became her main topic of conversation. Whenever she spoke of this friend of hers, she put on a snobby accent, which irritated me. I thought she demeaned herself by trying to change the way she spoke, but as I couldn't let go of my stage addiction, neither could my mother completely let go of her birthright. She also complained about the harshness of her life. She'd go shopping with her brown bag, come in the house, drop it down on the floor and say to Brian, "Feel this, Brian, just feel the weight of it." Brian played the role of her captive audience well. I couldn't stand her moans and groans. He'd pick the bag up and say, "That's heavy, all right," then say to me afterwards, "I don't know what I'm supposed to say. She says this every time we come home." We bought her a shopping bag on wheels with a plastic liner and lid, identical to the one I used to haul my groceries home. Perfect for her. "If it rains, Mum, your shopping won't get wet, and it's so light your arms won't feel a thing." She accepted it, but David told me she never used it. Then she complained about the cold bedrooms. She carried on so much. We bought her one of the new safety oil heaters that turn off automatically if tipped over. A complete waste of our money. It sat unopened as she refused to use it. We soon realized Mum liked complaining. She wasn't searching for solutions. Our complaints, though, were crying out for solutions. Our kitchen ceiling leaked in many different places. If rain threatened, we'd take every pot, pan, bowl, and pail we owned and set them all over the floor to catch the drips. The landlord didn't seem in a hurry to patch up the ceiling, so we looked for another flat. We found one in Muswell Hill and planned on moving in the middle of June. At the beginning of May 1966, an overwhelming compulsion swept over me to write a letter to my parents, asking their forgiveness for all the troubles I'd caused them over the years. I apologized for the fights and the selfish behavior I'd exhibited as a child and teenager, and stressed that I loved them both very much. An enormous sense of lightness accompanied me as I hurried out to post the letter. Mum wrote back stating that she and Dad hoped I would be able to go home with Brian at the holiday weekend at the beginning of June. It would be so nice to see us both then. She described her flower garden, beautiful with tulips and wallflowers in full bloom, but now, unfortunately, going off. She was quite touched by the part of my letter that spoke about those past times. "There is no need to worry or feel guilty about anything, dear. Both Daddy and I love you very much. He has asked me to say so. I know there were, as you said, times when we never used to see eye to eye, but even then, I still loved you, dear. You see, mums always love their children, if they are real mums, so there is nothing to forgive." Then she went on about the funny times. The day I got lost in the fog in the North Street School playground at 8 years of age, that old story. For once I didn't mind. The air had cleared. It had nothing to do with that fog of so many years ago. We went home for the Whitsun weekend and stayed with Brian's parents. The holiday, aside from the religious tradition, a celebration of spring, when the sowing of all seeds is done. A festival honouring the promise of new life. I don't remember what we did, split our time between both families. I only remember part of the last day, the sowing my dad and I accomplished in each other's hearts. Brian and I took the bus to the high street and walked from there to my house. Dindin was much the same, sitting in his favourite chair, smoking his pipe. David, indifferent, not interested in our domestic affairs. Mum wanted to know all about our new flat. A garden of your own, how nice. No more stairs. And I wanted to see my dad. He's at the factory. That's where you'll find him. And with a resigned shrug, she added, he almost lives there these days. So after a short while, we walked back into the town centre, down West Stockwell Street, all the way to the bottom of the hill, and around the corner by the Stockwell Arms pub to the factory entrance. It took a little while before we found him, and his face lit up when he saw us. He showed us his latest project, a discarded work shed he'd transformed into a personal hideaway for himself, complete with electrical hookup, so he could boil water in a kettle for tea, and a single bed. He reminded me of a young boy showing off his tree fort or some such secret place, so unlike the father I grew up with. When we said we needed to get back to Mum's for tea, he insisted on walking with us back up the hill to the high street, where we stood on the corner chatting for a few minutes. He didn't seem to want us to go. Animated conversation, holding us there with words full of emotional connection. His parting words to us were, "If you ever want anything, just ask. I'm always here. You know where to find me, don't forget." "We won't," we both called out, as we waved goodbye and crossed the street to walk home. As we glanced back, we could see him still standing on the corner watching us, and so we waved once more until he turned and walked back down the hill. Brian said, "Your dad seems really happy, doesn't he? I've never seen him quite that way before." "Neither have I replied. "He certainly is different." A week later, we received a letter from him, the one and only time he wrote. In his stylish handwriting, he explained that Mum asked him to write, as she had to do the ironing. How unusual for Mum to ask him to write, when all these years she's always done it. He told of how a neighbour had taken them in his car on an outing to Lavenham, Suffolk, where they visited the Guildhall, full of antiques. Mum's friend asked her to enter Toy into 2 dog shows and offered to take her in her car. It sounded as if things were going well with them. He finished the letter with, "We were glad you both enjoyed yourselves with us, and we missed you when you left. It seemed so quiet. Well, I haven't any more news this time. Hope you have a nice day to move on Saturday. We all send our love to you, both, Mum and Dad." There were 5 small kisses at the bottom, and 1 bigger one with little dots around it. An artistic touch, I thought. Thank you for listening. Please feel free to subscribe, like, or comment on this reading, and hopefully you will tune in to the next one. Bye for now.